meeting of the Johnson County Charter Commission 2021 edition to order. It's 4 o'clock. First item, Ms. Sater, would you call the roll, please?
Wendy Bingesser. Mike Bain. Karen Brownlee. Okay. Vicki Charlesworth.
Vicki Charlesworth present.
Jim Denny. Thank you. Jane Dirks. Jimmy Gaona. Not present at the time. Tedrick House.
Cedric House here.
Randy Hutchins.
Randy Hutchins here.
Chris Iliff.
Here.
Laura Klingensmith. Joy Costin.
Joy Costin here.
Brent McCune.
Brent McCune here.
Eric Michelson. Not present at the moment. Ed Peterson.
Ed Peterson here.
Don Rattan.
Don Rattan is here.
Leslie Riverola.
Leslie Riverola is here.
Don Roberts.
Don Roberts here.
Kyle Russell. Kyle Russell is not present at the moment. Paula Swak. Brenda Sharp. Greg Shelton.
Greg Shelton is here.
Greg Smith. Thank you. Zach Thomas. Zach is not present at the moment. And Chairman Musel.
Musel here.
Can I check on Karen Brownlee? Jimmy Gaona. Eric Michelson.
I just admitted Eric Michelson.
Okay, I'll announce if people come in at the
Okay.
time.
I will recognize that we have a quorum because I know we have at least 13 people in the room and multiple people on Zoom. We're continuing to meet both in person and via Zoom and making ourselves available to the public on Zoom. So we'll move on. The next item is consider approval of the July 28, 2021 agenda, which I think was sent out on Friday. Are there any questions or is there a motion to approve the agenda as published?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Peterson, seconded by Brenda Sharp to approve the agenda as published. Any discussion or questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries. I kidded Member McCune because Brent couldn't be here today. He's on his way to the airport. I didn't know who was going to make the motions because Brent's been pretty good about that. So we're going to have somebody step up. Commissioner Brownlee just got to the meeting, so we'll note that. Second item is consider approval of the July 12, 2021 minutes, our last meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes from our July 12 meeting?
Chairman Musel, I'd move to approve the minutes as presented.
Just one moment, please, Senator. Okay. Motion by Senator Denning to approve, and whoever just tried to move also could second.
I'll second that. That's Brent.
Oh, Brent's available by Zoom. Thank you, Brent. Moved and seconded to approve the July 12 minutes. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries without objection, without opposition. Our new business, no old business, new business. I've reminded everybody about questions for our commissioners. We now have two members of the commission who have submitted written questions for our county sitting county commissioners who will be here at our next meeting. And so if you have more, please get them in. I think I said in the email by August 2nd, because our meeting is August 9th, and we want to share those with the commissioners. So you've got about a week to get questions in if you want to have written questions, which the commissioners might be better prepared to respond to. Also, if you have questions for former county managers, because of scheduling issues, we're probably going to ask them to respond in writing. Obviously, we might have them available for our public hearings as well, but we're not going to be able to schedule them because of their various conflicts before our first public hearing, which is scheduled for September 13th. And then finally, still asking for potential charter amendment topics. Linda sent out again the form for that. And our initial review of those topics would be scheduled for September 22nd. Any questions about that schedule or other items before we move into the presentations? If not, we'll move right into the first presentation is scheduled by the Budget and Financial Planning Department of the college, Scott Newfield and Robin Symes. Thank you for coming. Look forward to your comments, and then we'll take questions.
I'm Scott Newfield with the Budget Office and also the County Manager's Office. With me is Robin Symes, the Deputy Director, who's basically running the show since I'm upstairs most of the time, hanging out with Mr. Thompson. You can see our mission vision here. In a lot of ways, the way I think about budget is that we sort of bring the numbers and the management of the organization together. Our primary focus is putting together the county manager's proposed budget and then monitoring it throughout the year. But we put a lot of, Robin usually does that for me. I should just hand that to you now because I will mess up again and again. I apologize. So I think that's the primary thing. We try to be pretty strategic in how we do things, and we try to keep an eye on the county's financial status long term, and that's really how we're oriented, and really to put forth the goals of the organization and to fund those through the budget process. And again, the vision is really about the guidance and the leadership that we exhibit. And later on, when we get to another slide, I'm going to talk about some of the things we've done. I'm going to interrupt Robin on one of her slides. As far as our role, it's really about providing support to the county manager and the county manager's office, and also to the departments, agencies, and offices and the board. So we really have three customer sets in my mind, but our primary customer set is the county manager because it is her proposed budget that we are helping to put together, to guide, to inform, so that good decisions are made. In terms of the core functions, I talked about presenting a balanced budget on behalf of the county manager to the board for their consideration. And I talked about the departments, agencies, and offices. We really work with them extensively. We partner with them, but we also provide impact, quite frankly, to the manager's office in really kind of separating the wheat from the shaft in terms of requests and what are the highest level needs. And so our analysts do a lot of work in vetting out what the needs of the department are, separating the needs from the wants, and really trying to align those with the strategy, provide that kind of information to the manager's office so they can make good decisions. And as we move through the budget process, good information to the commissioners so they can make good decisions. We lead and manage a number of key committees. Revenue estimating is huge. Most of our revenues are fairly stable, but there's some that are volatile. We have some interesting years when the revenues don't come in, and so we manage that process. The capital improvement program is just what it sounds like. We have a 5-year CIP, and we lead a committee that vets the projects and put them in the priority order for the manager's consideration. Debt management is we really issue and manage the debt from our office. We partner with FMA and the accountants with regard to this, but we have found at the county that it works better, that the debt issuance works with budget because we're more familiar with what's going on with the CIP, with facilities, wastewater, et cetera, and where there need to be adjustments made, which typically happens. Not everything goes according to plan with regard to debt management. We've increased our focus on performance measurements, and that's led out of my shop. And then lastly, we run the Personnel Review Committee, which is somewhat unique to county government. And, you know, the biggest part of our expenditure or spend is on employees. Those are costs that are not fixed. They go up with inflation. Benefits go up, healthcare goes up, salaries go up. And so we vet those very carefully at the county. FTEs are not added without board approval, but except for emergencies, they don't come before the board without being vetted first by this committee. And it's fairly unique to county government. It's been in existence for a little over 20 years. Ensuring the implementation of the adopted budget and making sure it aligns with the board's intent are really a matter of monitoring budgets, managing through issues throughout the year. And then obviously in terms of the proposed budget, that's where we do the alignment part up front. Strategic, operational, and financial expertise for the organization. My folks are frequently called into all manner of operational decision-making and cleaning up problems and working on committees and doing all sorts of things. So they have to be strong financially, but most of them have to come with an MPA background and a good management or organizational bent. And so we really, in my mind, bring the numbers and the management together. And that's kind of unique as far as our role. I talked earlier about supporting county manager. And one of the things that we focused on, we've got a slide in a minute, is on innovation efforts. That's something that's very important to Penny, and she sees innovation as tied very closely with our high performing organization efforts, or HPO efforts, in looking at better ways to do things, whether it's to save money or be more efficient, or to improve service delivery. And that's a fairly new initiative that is run out of our office, but is closely led by Joe Connor, one of the assistant county managers as well. That includes being a resource for problem-solving projects and initiatives, and also really going in sometimes and kind of doing the Lean Six Sigma efficiency things as well. And lastly, just to help with the culture building, so that employees at all levels are thinking themselves as leaders, but also how can we do things better? Just always trying to free up the creativity and the thought processes and the leadership of folks at all levels. And we've seen a number of good outcomes along those lines, where somebody in the public works crew figures out a better way to do things and saves money, et cetera. This is kind of something that we just are trying to build up, and quite frankly, took a little bit of a hit during COVID, and we're looking to kind of restart that and re-energize that as we come out of COVID, although things are obviously great these days. So this is a chart on innovation. It's kind of a flow chart. This is really talking about the culture, and you know, if you can really get everybody to have that mindset, there are pathways and opportunities that come from that, and then you have the improvements, the innovation. So there's a couple different ways to look at it. This is graphically, and so I look at innovation as kind of having a threefold approach. One is we do structured projects. We went into Fred's shop before Fred got here, and led a reorganization, and really, I think, streamlined some things, found some areas where we could be structured a little differently. We solved a few problems, and I think really kind of got rid of some issues that were there. It was a real focused project where we went in and met with the election staff. And again, this is before Fred got here, so I hate to talk about your department. It was a big project of ours. So it was a structured project. It wasn't about efficiency so much as it was tweaking the structure and then making some tough recommendations about changes that needed to happen, and those were implemented. Another piece is just things that come up. Our innovation folks get phone calls from individuals about ideas. They get requested to contribute to this team or that team. And so there's an informal piece. And then lastly, culturally, and this goes way beyond, the innovation staff, which is pretty small. We think that innovation needs to become more and more a part of our culture, where we're in a way to a path to continuous improvement. So there's a lot there. It's a small division, but it's really much broader in terms of looking at the culture. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Robin, and I'm just going to tell you the accomplishments.
Okay. At the end. All right. Good afternoon, Robin Symes, again with budget. Budget and financial planning, we report to and we act as an extension of the county manager's office. And what we mean by an extension is that we, as Scott said, we work with departments in relation to their budgets, the board and CMO initiatives, and then also other projects that may come up that are countywide related. We offer management and strategic assistance to all departments and again, the board and county manager's office. Budget's authority is determined by the Kansas statutes and also the county's financial and budget policies and procedures. For budget and financial planning, our proposed FY 2022 budget is $1.5 million with 10 FTE. As Scott mentioned, there's two divisions, the budget division and the innovation division. The budget division started with 10 FTE and it was down to 7 FTE at this point. Two of those were budget reductions over the years through the recession, and then also with COVID, we reduced our staff to help out with budget reductions. And then the other reduction is actually a movement over to innovation, and that's what started that division within our department. And then 2 other FTE were added to the innovation department. And so again, it makes 7 on the budget part and then 3 with innovation currently. The budget department, we're proud on the contractual commodities capital outlay. We try to be the example for other departments. We've kept that flat, relatively flat, since 2004. And so we have found efficiencies in other ways to make up for increases in our budgets. And then personnel is only increased due to salary and benefit changes. I want to talk a little bit about accomplishments for our department. We've obtained a AAA with Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch ratings. Johnson County is one of 42 out of 3,141 counties to achieve the AAA. The BOCC and county leadership proactively address potential revenue shortfalls by identifying reductions to current operating and capital expenditures, assuring sound fiscal management and stewardship during unprecedented times. The county saved approximately $13.1 million as a result of current refunding maturities for future interest savings in 2020. Over the last decade since the county achieved the AAA rating, Johnson County has saved over $31 million by refunding numerous current issues. Another achievement is the Distinguished Budget Award with Government Finance Officers Association. We've received that for 29 consecutive years. GFOA established this award to encourage state and local governments to prepare budget documents of the very highest quality. To earn this recognition, budget documents must meet program criteria and excel as policy documents, financial plan, operation guides, and communication tools. So again, we put all of that together to show the county's budget, but again, submit that every year, and we're very proud of that achievement. So at this time, oh, sorry about that. Homeworld Charter. Need to move on to Homeworld Charter. So how the Homeworld Charter affects the budget department is section 4.03. There's 2 areas. The county manager shall, after appropriate consultation with the commission, prepare and submit a recommended annual budget, including all revenue sources to the commission for final adoption, and administer the budget after its effective date. So obviously we're an integral part of that with the county manager. The second item is that we prepare and submit to the commission annually before May 1st, recommendations for a capital improvement and financing program for Johnson County. So each year we usually go to the board in April and we show them our initial 5-year plan before the budget process gets underway. And so that they're aware of that, and so that we follow the charter as well. Do you want to add? Okay, Scott, I'd like to add a little bit more.
So staying with that charter item on the CIP before May 1st, that is something that we would not be unhappy if this commission removed that. it came out of the last charter commission, I believe. When we asked them, what the deal was that, there wasn't any recollection that happened through the process of the sausage making. And really, it's kind of getting the cart before the horse. So it ends up being an informational presentation, but then we go right back at it in the budget process within a month. And so it's a little redundant. And while it's not a big deal, we're not complaining. It hasn't been particularly value added with that May 1st date because we generally undertake the budget in May and June. And so really not a lot of value is added. And I will count on Commissioner Peterson when you guys get to deliberating to remember those weird CIP presentations right before the proposed budget. The last thing I want to talk about, Robin talked about some of the savings with the debt issuance vis-a-vis the AAA rating. We're proud of that, but we also know that we probably should be AAA. I glanced out of the corner of my eye, somebody who runs the city that's AAA. And so there are a number of AAA entities in Johnson County, Overland Park as well. Chairman Musil probably knows all about that. I know Chairman Eiler does, because Overland Park has been AAA for a number of years as well. Maybe even a year or two before us. But anyway, we're pretty proud of that. But our office is the ones in the ratings calls. And so we're the ones really speaking for the board and their financial management. And we continuously get high marks on our financial management. And a lot of that is our policies. And a lot of it's the discipline of the Board of County Commissioners. And then some of it is staff and our financial advisor doing a good job of articulating those positives. And we are proud of that, as Robin said. The other thing I would talk about is that, and again, Commissioner Peterson probably remembers this, but when times are tough, the budget office historically has stepped up and provided leadership to the county. We did that during the Great Recession, and that's getting to be a long time ago. But I would share with this commission that in addition to having the lowest mill levy by about 50% in the state of Kansas for the county taxing district, we went through the Great Recession, had 4 or 5 years in a row of reduced assessed valuation. And what that means is if you leave the mill levy flat, you get less revenue. And of course, sales tax and use tax was not good during that time. Most of our revenues were down. But we got through that entire period without raising the mill levy, even though our revenue went down. And we did that collaboratively with all departments. We led a process in tandem with the manager's office where we worked with departments to develop budget reductions. And then we put folks from the same strategic area together to prioritize them. And that was a collaborative effort that led to us being able to reduce budgets without impacting services. We also did vacancy review process, and we harvested vacant positions and reduced them. And so we cut 457 or 430 positions during that time and didn't lay anybody off. And so while it's sometimes inevitable that folks are laid off, what that did for our culture during that time of uncertainty where people's livelihood was the most important, we were able to navigate that without putting any undue burden on the taxpayers, no mill levy increases, and we cut all those positions without laying anybody off. So a lot of loyalty from employees knowing that we cared about their livelihood at a time where jobs were scarce or good jobs were scarce. And our office was pivotal in leadership on that. Robert and I spent about 2 hours in front of the board convincing them to change directions in December of 2008 before things got bad. And those are the types of leadership things. Again, that's a pretty old example, but it was really important, and I was very proud of the organization. I remember Chairman Eiler told me that we needed to do everything we could not to raise the mill levy. And he said, if we have to, we will, but I want you to do everything we can. And I didn't think we could, but we did. And it was from collaboration amongst all the departments, agencies, and offices. So that was a real coming together time for the county. It was tough, but it was kind of in some ways our proudest moment. So with that, I'll stop talking. I don't know if there's any questions about budget. We're not that exciting, so I will not be offended if there's no questions.
Thank you, Scott and Robin. Questions? Mayor Swatch?
Okay, I actually have a couple of questions, and I apologize if there's some redundancy involved. I just want to be certain I understand your role and the extent to which you support the Board of County Commissioners with your work. You mentioned our good friend, Mr. Fred Sherman, who hails from my part of the county, or did at one point. His budget is approved by the county, but not, I presume, put together by the county. Are there other entities like that where you might perform the innovation function, but the county is approving a budget, not necessarily setting that budget?
Well, I have to be careful with my words here because the election office, we have a number of departments, agencies, and offices that have unique standing in terms of who they report to, who appoints them, et cetera. Fred obviously is tied closely to the state. The DA is as well. What we do is we collaborate on a budget development process. And so how it works with the election office is not particularly dissimilar to how it works at more straight line county departments. We have a number of processes in place where the election commissioner or a department head or an elected official can document and write up what they need for next year. We typically start with what was last year's budget, and if we're not doing reductions during a recession, we assume that we're going to carry forward your commodities, your contractual, your utilities, your computer costs, all that kind of stuff. Unless there's a weird outlier, we sort of bring those forward. And if you need more, you ask for it. If you didn't spend all your money, we'll have a conversation about, can we reduce your budget? But we sort of start with a base budget brought forward. We also look at the staffing plan, whether it's in elections or the budget office, and say, here's how many employees you have. Here's how many hours they're budgeted for. Here's their salary. And we refresh those numbers because, again, in most years, there's salary increases, fringe benefit increases. So we build a base budget as a starting point. And then as election commissioner, and obviously we give extra money in presidential years and in national election years. Those are different levels of extra money. It's kind of automatic. But there might be something where Fred's got some costs that are going up and he says, I need more money because my utilities went up or whatever. So we document that. Or I need an extra FT because we've got these new requirements. And so they document that, it goes through process. And then we put together a proposed budget that might have additional funding for some of those things I listed for Fred. And then that will be highlighted in the budget, and the commissioners will have a chance to talk to Fred about that, talk to the budget office about our perspective. And then it's part of the adopted budget. So, technically, I guess, folks have more authority to develop their budget, but in general, most entities function administratively and we collaborate. We do the same thing with the sheriff's office. We don't always see eye to eye, but we work with everybody to develop their budget in terms of the agencies, offices, and departments of county government. By that, departments are somebody like budget, these folks besides Fred that are staff in the hierarchy. We talk about offices as either elected or appointed externally. So that'd be the sheriff, the DA, the election commissioner, those are offices. And then agencies are the governing boards. So there's different aspects of technically what we're doing, but functionally we collaborate the same way with everybody, if that makes sense.
Thank you. So one follow-up question, if I might. What happens when there's disagreement?
Well, we have fun conversations. Ultimately, the board makes those decisions. And so, there are statutes around the sheriff's budget that are different. And so the sheriff is to say what they need, and the board is to fund it. It's kind of what statute says. But typically we collaborate and try to get to some agreement or consensus. So, sometimes those negotiations are a little different, quite frankly, if it's the sheriff's office. But we try to get to a place and make sure what we're doing is acceptable to the sheriff. And so we work pretty closely with them. And I'm looking at Maury because that's his job. He's liaison. But I'm in those meetings too, as is, my budget analyst for them. And we really try to vet out, you know, what's tenable to both sides. And so there's a lot of work together like that. And so again, it's a little different depending on if it's an agency in office. You know, but the governing boards approve a budget, but it's just to be requested to the BOCC, and then ultimately they're the ones with the power to levy, and those final decisions are with them. But again, with the electeds, it's more of a negotiation and trying to get to an agreeable place for both sides.
And with regard to your innovation process, that would apply not just to the elections office, but to the DA, the sheriff, all those
Yeah,
boards, independent boards?
yeah. You know, we just did a big project with Fred's office. It wasn't particularly that it was the election office. It was before Fred got here. And I actually haven't ever had a chance because of COVID to really talk to him about it. But that's really where there's a need. We look at innovation as an asset. Again, we only have a couple of FTEs. We carried one vacant all through the pandemic where we thought the revenues were going to be down. So we haven't had a lot of those big projects, but that really is irrespective. We've done a project in the sheriff's office looking at classification and you know, making recommendations where that could be streamlined. But that's really, we look at that as an asset for anybody in the county. So it's not really tied to the structure. It's an asset where we're available to go in and help out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Other questions? Tedrick?
I had a question. I think you're the first person who's mentioned some change to the language of the charter that might be helpful to you.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm looking at that bullet point that you, well, maybe it's both of those bullet points, but I thought you were talking about the one about May 1st.
Yeah, I was.
And so if I understand it, your regular budget process means that you go before the commission sometime in June.
Typically, we go in May. That was, let me backtrack. Up until about 5 years ago, we went in June. 20 years ago, we went in July. The statutes around that prior to this recent Senate bill, the numbers escaping me, maybe Senator Denny can remember it, was that we had to adopt by August 20th. Now we can't have the public hearing until August 20th, and we have to adopt by September 20th. Did I get that right, Robin? Robin's the keeper of the calendar. So when the tax lid went into place, we started doing it in May, so that if we decided to do an election, we had time to do it. So that's when we started doing it in May. We may or may not change that going forward because the tax bill is out, and again, now the adoption has moved out later. But that's what it's driven off of. You know, just having that flexibility with under the tax lid is what had us doing it in May. We probably did it for about 15 years in June, and probably forever before that was in July. But that's all tied to statute. As far as the CIP requirement, it came out of the last Charter Commission, and it has not proved to be particularly advantageous. It's been kind of an exercise to check the box off. So that's where we would be happy if that one was removed.
I'm just a little confused because when I looked at the original charter, it looked like it had that May 1st date in there in that language.
There were no amendments recommended.
Okay,
in May of
I
2011.
I apologize. It was 20 years ago, whenever the
Okay,
first one was.
so-
I apologize.
So
It wasn't
if
last
you
time.
were to amend this to your preference by interlineation, would you just change that date, get rid of that date, or what changes would you make? to
I
the
would get rid of the date, just get rid of the clause, because we cover the CIP in print, comprehensively and quite frankly in more detail, because we're making decisions during the budget process, which again has been in May or June or July, depending on which decade you're talking about.
And so you would get rid of the annually before May 1st and just maybe put the word annually at the beginning of the phrase?
I think that's fine. Historically, the annual budget, sometimes you could just put the annual budget and capital improvement program in the first bullet and just get rid of the second, or you could get rid of the May 1st. Either one would be fine.
And the only question I would have for us as a group is whether it's beneficial as an institution to have some date in there for going forward. But
And the only thing with the date is that as we saw First with the tax lid, that changed when we did the budget process. And then now with, I can't remember the Senate, I should remember the number. Maury? 13. It's not even that big of a number. Senate Bill 13, the adoption date has changed. And when we can do the public hearing has changed. So that's why I wouldn't put a date in there, because then it could be in conflict with statute, because that's two fairly substantial changes impact to the budget process that have happened, I'd say, in the last 10 years. I think the tax lid was less than probably 5 or 6 years old. So it's happened twice recently. So that's why I would use a date anywhere.
Thank you.
I have no memory of what happened in 2001, that why the May 1st deadline was in there, but I know a lot of cities consider their CIP, their capital improvement program, separately from their operating budget. I don't know. I'm looking around for the mayors in the room, and Eric's not here, but is that true in Lenexa? And even in your, I don't know, smaller cities, but I think that's probably a reason to focus on the capital budget separately from the operating budget, even though you end up, dealing with all of them at one time with the public hearing. But I think Tedrick's right. You're the first person who suggested a change. And is it a burden, or is it simply you feel like you're doing it twice, with the second time being for real?
I wouldn't call it a burden. It's a little bit of work. It's some time at a commission meeting, but it does occasionally lead to confusion. But mostly it's just not necessary and it's not efficient. Okay. I'm not going to lose sleep if it stays in, but it was worth asking. So
I'll look for other questions here in the room and then move to those on Zoom. I don't see anybody in the room. Is there anybody on Zoom that has a question for Scott or Robin?
Yeah, Robin hasn't had to answer it yet. So come on, guys.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I know you'll stick around, because at the end, after we hear from financial management, I want to kind of get an idea of, sounds like there's a lot of overlap between those two. And I want to hear compare and contrast what the two departments do.
We'll stick around.
Let's move on to the election office and Fred Sherman. Fred, come on up. Welcome. Oh, I'm sorry. Linda asked me, we have some people who've arrived. She's going to announce them. Yeah, I can hear it.
I need to make note for the record. Karen Brownlee did come in at 4:04. Jimmy Gayona came in at 4:06, and Zach Thomas came in on Zoom at 4:27. So we now have 24 present. Thank you.
It's tough to be late here, though. They're gonna record it. Traffic.
Chairman,
Yes.
hi, Eric Michelson. I came in about 4:02, and you had just said I wasn't here. I just wanted to make sure that Linda made a note that I was here as well.
Yeah, she did. She wrote that down, Eric.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Fred, tell us about the election office, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Fred Sherman. I'm your Johnson County Election Commissioner. So start off with a broad overview in terms of the county election official. So each of the 105 counties in Kansas has a designated county election officer responsible for conducting all official elections held in that particular county. In Kansas, the 4 largest counties, that would be Johnson, Sedgwick, which is where Wichita is, Shawnee is Topeka, and then Unified Government of Wyandotte County. The election officer is the election commissioner appointed by the Secretary of State. For the other 101 counties in Kansas, the election officer is the county clerk, which is an elected position. So that's a little bit of the unique aspect of that. I have included the Kansas statute 19-3419, which provides generally the broad overview in regards to the setup for the election commissioner. The magic number there is 130,000, which is basically equating to the 4 largest counties in Kansas. Again, Johnson, Sedgwick, Shawnee, and Wyandotte County. We'll see when the census numbers come out if Douglas County makes that mark or not. They're probably close to that number, but right now there's just 4 in the state of Kansas where the election commissioner is appointed by the Secretary of State, is not the elected county clerk position. I am actually the 10th person that's been appointed as election commissioner here in Johnson County, but if you look at that list, there's actually 11 names listed on there. Connie Schmidt was gracious enough. She came back and actually led the office here in the 2020 presidential election cycle. She agreed to, and the current Secretary of State, Scott Schwab, appointed her in early 2020 to lead the office through the presidential election cycle. Connie served for about a 10-year period of time from 1995. That she came back to kind of mentor me. So put me in a really an ideal situation where a Hall of Fame election administrator was able to kind of lead me through the election process and show me the specific X's and O's of what all needs to be done. And then I was appointed here in January of this year as the current election commissioner. In terms of the structure and kind of the way it operates, is I do operate under the general supervisory of the Secretary of State. So I report directly to them. I do not report to the county commission or to the county manager. That's not to say I ignore them. I'm in constant collaboration with county leadership on a number of things. And I am responsible for following the county's personnel policies, purchasing policies, budgeting and auditing policies, and so on and so forth. And it's kind of related earlier with Mayor Schwach, I do submit a budget to the Board of County Commissioners and a budget request. Although it's kind of formalized here in the language, it really operates much like very much a department, whether it's public works or planning or sheriff, those kind of things. It is rolled into the typical budgetary process for the county, traditionally how it's been done here in Johnson County, from my understanding. In terms of the powers, again, listed here under the KSA of 19-3424 in terms of specifically what is I'm responsible for doing here as the election commissioner. So as election commissioners, I conduct elections under the operation of the supervision of the Secretary of State and comply with statutes, rules, and regulations and such for the voters to conduct these elections. There are some additional divisions, and I believe these have been revised recently through some state updates that was done in the past few years in regards to that operation and powers that I need to manage the budget of the department in terms of the personnel policies, the pay plans, and those things in regards to the county-wide operation and policies. And they're listed here, actually embedded into state statute there. And finally, each year with the budgeting process, there's the specific statutory language in regards to the budget process. But as I mentioned before, as Scott mentioned, the election office traditionally here in Johnson County is operated just as a department per se in terms of the approval and the allocation of budgets. So that's the basic presentation I have. And with that, I'll be glad to stand for any questions.
You're desperate to get us back on schedule. Thank you, Fred. Questions? Yes, Commissioner Sharp.
Let's see. Possibly. Looks like it's, okay, there we go.
I told him not to turn your mic.
That was a good idea. Thank you so much for your very brief presentation. My understanding a few years ago was that the election office had very separate infrastructure than the county, IT, for instance, and payroll and those kinds of things that seemed from an outside observer's perspective to be duplicative. Is that different now, or is that changed? And then second question, I also understood that basically at some point in time in our history, whatever the election office presented to the commissioners as a budget was what they had to fund, whether or not they agreed with that, those expenditures or not. Can you comment on both of those issues?
Sure, I'll take your first one first. So all the staff right now, actually 2020 and 2021, the budget or the election office was budgeted with 16 FTEs or 16 full-time equivalents. Actually, the 22 budget, we have 19 because I was able to actually work within the existing budget allocation and allocate and working through the process of creating additionally 3 TFDs without increasing the budget. All the staff basically are county employees and are subject to the county policies, personnel policies, the benefits, all those kind of aspects of it. And even the election commissioner myself is paid through the county's payroll system, the same thing in terms of benefits and those kind of things. It has always been, and I think is from the public perceived as really an operation of the county at large, even though the leadership may directly report to the Secretary of State as appointed to it. But if the election office fails, I think the county is perceived as failing. And if we succeed, the county succeeds. And I must say that the county has been very gracious in terms of the budget authority. That is not the case probably in some of the other counties where I hear election officers in other counties striving for money. And every department was sometimes need additional resources, but relative to what I hear from other county election officials, we've done very well here in Johnson County, have good resources to basically conduct the elections on the scale and magnitude that we do. There's probably been, and again, I'm not intimately familiar with all the past election commissioners and the dialogue. There's probably been times that there's been some discussions and disagreements on the budget authority, but for the most part of infrastructure, technology has been increasing in the election world. We have gone from what has been traditionally a single paper ballot to a very technologically oriented election process now. And under that aspect, we do get great support from the county DTI or information systems process. We are also in the process of trying to almost segregate that to for a security standpoint, because if we are coupled with the county, particularly from the IT perspective, that is somewhat of a vulnerability. So it's a delicate balance of isolating the elections in terms of the security standpoint, but also having those tentacles of support and knowledge, particularly in peak volumes where we need sometimes in elections, because we're very similar to like an NFL team in terms of running a football game. We have high demands in very short periods of time where on game day, we require a lot of resources and a lot of constantly moving parts at the same time. So I hope that answers your questions.
It does. Congratulations on an outstanding election.
Thank you very much.
Other questions?
Chairman Musil, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Joy.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mr. Sherman. I am very appreciative of the work that you do and the work of the county election office. I wonder if you're really confident about our most recent elections. In some cases, in the 2020 election, we had participation up to 90% turnout. It was a huge turnout. And I wonder if you're feeling very confident that we have the mechanisms in place to accurately reflect the will of the citizens when it comes to casting our vote. Are you confident in our election system at all levels?
Yes, I am 1000% confident in the results of the November election this last year and also moving forward. I know there's been a lot of focus and attention and dialogue and reporting and debate on it, and that's been healthy. People have tried to learn a lot about elections, election administration, but I am confident that the security and the integrity of election here in Johnson County is done appropriately.
And what do you think, what effect do you think persistent efforts in this erosion of confidence that we continue to hear in the public sphere have on your ability to recruit people, to budget, to staff, to find volunteers to recruit? Is there any kind of morale issue that you're finding because of this constant batter?
I wouldn't say bad morale as much as frustration, because folks that have worked as election workers or poll workers on election day, they are kind of passionate. And they actually say, I wish these people would actually come and work as an election worker and really see a lot of the X's and O's of what all is in place. Like any kind of operations, once you get into the nitty-gritty details, you learn a lot more than you ever thought about. So we had almost a record turnout for election workers. We had over 2,000 people step up to volunteer last November. So we had a good cross-section of the population. And I think we are still always striving to find good people to be election workers and volunteers for us, but it does not dampen it per se. It's made them maybe a little frustrated, but it is definitely kind of an ongoing public debate.
Right. So it sounds like you don't see any problem. I mean, based on what you've seen, you don't see any evidence of tampering or corruption in our election system here in Johnson County. We are good to go.
We have a thorough system and we are implementing it to the T.
Thank you so much for your hard work. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Other questions in the room or by Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Mr. Sherman, can you describe your background? Give us a little bio on yourself.
So Fred Sherman, yeah, I have actually not worked in elections. This is kind of my first stint as election. I started basically in January 2020 when Connie Schmidt was appointed. But I have worked in local government pretty much my entire professional career, over 30 years, and primarily the main chunk of it here in Johnson County. My background is primarily in planning and zoning. In the municipal level. I actually am a native. I grew up in Lawrence, Kansas, and actually worked for the city of Lawrence for a while, but I started in Olathe as a planning tech. I got my master's degree at Georgia Tech. Like a lot of my cohorts, I wanted to leave the region, and I went to a different era and got my master's degree at Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta. And I realized the rest of the world is messed up as where you're from, so I came back to this area. I have worked in Olathe. I've worked in Lawrence. I was the planning director in Miami County. I did a stint for the city of Overland Park in the planning department, and I was the community development director in Gardner. Prior to the election office, I spent about 8 years as the city clerk in Westwood, where I was very familiar with Mayor Schwach here and the Northeast intimacy of the communities up through there. So that's my background, has been in local government, primarily in the city level.
Just a follow-up, how do you feel your background in planning translates into being an election commissioner?
Good question. You know, there's a lot of, it's been challenging actually. From a planner, I've been dealing more from a policy perspective. You know, what do you want your city to be? You want to be like Branson, Missouri, or some other community? Whereas elections is less policy oriented. It's very more rural and specific statute oriented. So that's been an adjustment for me. But I think in terms of understanding the broad kind of demographics of the county, the nuances, I've got a great understanding of that aspect, mainly because I've worked really from corner to corner of this county in different jurisdictions.
Thanks very much.
Fred, I think the correct answer was somebody's mad at you at both positions. Dawn?
How do we increase local voter?
So the question is, how do you increase voter local turnout? And that's the magic question. I wish I had the magic answer to in terms of that aspect of it. In fact, we have an election currently going on right now, the primary races for the jurisdictions that have enough candidates filed. Actually, it's about 60% of the county right now has the opportunity. Over 250,000 registered voters has an opportunity to vote here in the current election, with election day coming up next Tuesday. Unfortunately, we're only going to probably see a single-digit % turnout for this current election. Advocacy, education, information, but the apathy is difficult to overcome, particularly in these non-presidential or non-federal races. It's difficult.
Fred, I have a question that one of the things the commission can do, and that the last commission did in 2011, was recommend some legislative action. And I realize you haven't been in the position very long, but do you have any thinking from, and national conferences haven't been held probably because of COVID, but should we as a county consider a better system for us to control the election commissioner as opposed to leaving it in the hands of the Secretary of State, whomever that might be?
Yeah, and that's a policy question. You know, there is no right or wrong answer. Probably the one element that I know has been discussed, and again, it's a policy issue, is currently under the statute, the election commissioner has to be a registered voter or resident of the county for 2 previous years. And I've not had a discussion with the current Secretary of State, Scott Schwab. He has appointed 3 commissioners recently, myself in 2021, Wyandotte County, and just recently in Sedgwick County. So he may have an insight in terms of whether that limits or hinders. You know, if the county were to hire other department heads, be it HR director or someone in charge of the wastewater system, typically they would do a national search coast to coast. Appraiser is a great example, you know, where it's somewhat even an appointed position, and the current appraiser came from a different metro area. Under the current statutes for Kansas, with that 2-year residency, you limit the applicant pool down to only Johnson County residents lived here with the previous 2 years. And finding someone who has specific election administration of that pool can be challenging. Now, again, jurisdictions throughout this metro area have different policies in terms of residency requirements of whether department heads or employees or those kind of things. So there is no right or wrong answer, but that has been one matter that probably could be evaluated to basically give additional choices to whoever makes the appointment.
Thank you. Ed Peterson.
Fred, there's a lot of talk now about either expanding or contracting access to ballots and voting going on all over the country. Where do you think Johnson County should be on that issue?
Well, Johnson County is part of the larger state system, and we're going to follow the state of Kansas's voting laws. But we're not unique unto ourselves. So Kansas has really had a pretty good system. Again, Connie Schmidt has harped it in a lot in this past year when I was working under her tutelage. Really since 1996, there's been choices or options for Kansas to vote. You can vote in person on election day. We have had advanced voting, and we've kind of expanded that tremendously here in Johnson County, where in November we had 10 advanced sites. And then you can also vote for any excuse or no reason, with no excuse voting by mail by making applications. So Kansas has a very, I think, voter-friendly, well-defined system that's been debated in terms of whether that magnitude in other states. And again, I only know the Kansas system, and Johnson County is going to work under the Kansas statutes.
Sure.
Jimmy Gaona here. Commissioner Sherman, thanks for your presentation. Kind of on the lines of what the other commissioner said here. If there was changes, do you and your office feel ready and able to complete any legislation that may come out of Topeka? Or is there something we could do that would put, emergency personnel into place for you or something of that nature to comply with legislation that may come out unknowingly to us?
Yeah, so any change or any new legislation is always a challenge because I think if you were to really critically examine Chapter 25, which is the election statutes, and could thoroughly go through it, and our legal staff does all the time, there's a lot of conflicts and things where you got to kind of tilt your head a little bit. It would be nice if every word was crystal clear in the direction. And basically, because legislation has been passed over time by different legislative bodies, sometimes the intent is difficult to get and actually some specifics. So even this current election, with some of the legislation that's been passed here this past year, we're struggling, and because it's right out of the gate, to get specific compliance to those things. So I wouldn't say that there is an easy fix anytime there is a change, and that's probably happened in some of the other states. When the legislature makes changes, they make a lot of changes or some changes, and that's the ones you want to do. So any change is difficult, but do we have the perfect election statutes here in Kansas? No, we do not. We have a very good one, I'll tell you that much, better than other states, but it's difficult to find the very specific perfect statute or laws.
Yeah, my question was more around the world of preparedness. Now, I get what you're saying, and either side of how anyone may feel about that. I'm just saying, is there something this charter could do to prepare your office more?
It's hard from a charter commission standpoint because really as an election commission, that's through the state statutes. The charter is not, you can't charter out of that per se. There's nothing specific into it. Again, I think we've got a very good relationship. My background is in local government. It's hard for me to not think about not going through the budgetary process with county commission approval. So, I find it difficult. There are some administrative decisions that ultimately will fall on my shoulders, like number and location of polling sites and those kind of things. And back to the chairman's question about being a planner, I think that is advantageous to me because I know Johnson County very well. I know the nuances of it in terms of hopefully making good quality decisions for implementing elections and polling sites.
Okay.
I don't see any other questions in the room. Are there any questions on Zoom that haven't had a chance to be asked?
Mr. Chairman, this is Greg Shelton.
Sure, Greg.
Hi, Fred. Thank you for being here and thank you for the work. I'll just reiterate what everyone said to that point. My question is just this: in terms of engaging our voters and getting them to participate at the rates similar to what we saw last fall, what is your plan for doing that? And to pick up on what Mr. Gaona mentioned, what, if anything, could we do as a charter commission to support that?
Great question. So in terms of my plan is obviously we have a fairly diverse and wide demographic profile who we're serving. And, from just like the digital divide and how they react to certain campaigns and those kind of things. Not everyone takes social media. Some people only do social media. So it is a challenge trying to get a good uniform message out there. I think a little of the legislative process, and if you look at the demographics of who's been participating, particularly the vote by mail, it tends to be the older voters. So I think trying to develop a better outreach campaign and information in terms of how the vote by mail process is done in Kansas should help that participation rate, clear up some voter confusion aspect of it. But really, the outreach, the marketing, the campaigning aspect of it is a missing element, and actually will be filled by one of my new full-time equivalent positions I'm seeking, is to get someone who knows marketing and outreach a lot better and not just specifically elections.
I see no other questions. So Fred, thank you. There may be questions at the end of the day that folks come up with or that we submit later in writing, but very much appreciate your time. And we'll move on to financial management and administration. Brent Christensen.
Chairman, I'd like to announce that Kyle Russell came into the Zoom meeting at 4:57. Now we have 25 members, all 25 members.
Welcome, Kyle. We're right at 5 o'clock and these two last presentations have more slides than the others. So I'll just encourage us all to spend a half an hour on each.
All right.
Not a threat, Brent. Sorry.
Well, I was thinking I was going to follow Fred and just say hello and goodbye, but that's fine. Good afternoon. I'm Brent Christensen from the Director Department of Financial Management Administration, and I'm joined today with my Assistant Director, Becky Jones, and together we look forward to sharing a little bit about our department and to answer your questions. So our mission, financial management is a support service department, and within the county, so is our mission statement, what is expected of our staff, and that is provide the highest level of service to our citizens, vendors, departments and agencies, our employees that we interact with each day. A little history. Finance department is actually one of the newer departments, if you really want to get down to it, to the county. It was established back in the mid 80s. Before that, fiscal services were handled in the county clerk's office. In 1998, the Office of Financial Management was established after the merger of the Department of Finance, Purchasing and Risk Management, and the Budget Department. And we went under a CFO type of role. A couple of years later, the Budget Division rolled off. We kept the Office Financial Management Department. We also rolled off the CFO role and went back to a Finance Director. And we had the Office of Financial Management for the next 10 years until 2010, when the vacant treasurer, which is an appointed position, became vacant. And it was determined that the treasurer and motor vehicle operations would merge with the Office of Financial Management and become a new department called Treasury Financial Management. That department would have not just the finance director, but also the county treasurer. That person would then is Tom Francis, who until earlier this year had those dual roles. In January 21, after a lengthy evaluation of the Department of Records and Tax Administration and an effort to provide better customer service and efficiencies for our residents, it was proposed and the Board of County Commissioners approved the reorganization of the programs and services provided by our two county departments. Treasury, Taxation, and Vehicles would provide the public-facing services, while Financial Management Administration would focus on the internal support services. Tom Franz we will be going more in depth on the Treasury, Taxation, and Services, Vehicle Services, following my presentation. So this slide reflects the hierarchy of our department and the various divisions that I'll touch on in the next couple of slides. So this is our financial overview, and I would just state that we're overhead and we know it. Except for the Risk Management Division, Financial Management is part of the general fund and depends on the county ad valorem tax. The Risk Management Division is an internal agency of the county, is funded by cost allocation received from all county departments and agencies, with the exception of Parks and Rec. Additionally, the county has a healthcare fund that includes employee and employer contribution to cover healthcare, dental, and vision costs. As I mentioned earlier, we know we are overhead to the organization, so you'll consider the number of services provided by our department. You'll be surprised by the low number of employees that actually support all those services. As you'll see, there is a larger increase from 2020 to 21 in FTEs due to the fact that some employees from the former Records and Tax Administration Department transferred to the Financial Management Department. So if the county was a car, we'd be that motor. We are the department that makes things go. Financial management touches everything and everyone in the organization, outside agencies, as well as the vendor community. And if you're curious, the motor is a Volvo supercharger. So Johnson County is a decentralized organization from a business operation perspective. You know, if you've been to business school, you can be either centralized or decentralized. And Johnson County is a very decentralized organization in terms of how business is performed. And for financial management, we have a smaller footprint in regards to people because a lot of the business operations is performed in the departments. And for the larger departments, such as like wastewater and corrections, sheriff, they have their own finance managers and staff. We work closely with them, but they will work with closer to things that are related to their line of business that they can be better at and be more specialized than if you did it from a central perspective. So where do we come in? Well, we establish the internal controls, the procedures and protocols of the various levels of business. We host quarterly financial user group meetings and provide training on relevant business needs at the time for our various business users, such as like year-end training. I would consider us the master architect of business operation procedures and how processes and functions within the applications that we run on the county's ERP system or enterprise resource planning system. And we continuously look for efficiencies that we can implement for the whole, not for our department, but for the whole for the organization. For example, we have a large purchasing card program. So it saves everyone in the organization where you can purchase items that you need. We got rid of store accounts, which is also protects us from fraud. But that someone that's in, let's say, a facilities department that needs a part, they don't have to go drive somewhere particular. They can go to the nearest hardware store and buy it and get it. And the turnarounds quickly, they have their part and the vendor's happy because they're getting paid within a few days. And for us, from a county perspective, is that based on the value of the business, we're going to get a rebate. And so, when we first started this 20 plus years ago, we did $1 million worth of business. We got a small rebate. Today, we do over $20 million, and our rebates is close to $250,000 back to which goes right back to the countywide fund. But it also saves in staff. I have less staff because it saves in about 45,000 invoices being processed each year because of how that program works. Okay. Also, too, we also support large and small departmental business operations for providing financial and what I call human capital services for departments. Financial management actually has MOUs with the Johnson County Parks and Rec District, with the Law Library, with the Johnson County Library, and the Johnson County Fire District number 2. And with that, you get advantages. For example, Parks Department, when we brought them on and went live in 2012, they didn't have a purchasing card program. We were able to give them a purchasing card program as well, but also reap the benefits of being they're a medium-sized organization, but they reap the benefits of having a large organization so that they receive the services and the rebate rates higher than they normally would if they were just a standalone agency. Our divisions, so benefits, they work closely with our payroll staff that's in our department, as well as Department of Human Resources. We have staff of 4 that administer all the benefit offerings available to employees and their families across the county, as well as retirees. Our operations division, they handle the disbursement side of things, either in terms of vendor payments, employee reimbursements, employee payroll. Over 97% of our payable disbursements are paid electronically. And we mandate all county employees receive their pay by direct deposit. This group also manages all of the vendor records and tax filings. Shared services is a newer division that we started in 2016. And that was to help some of our smaller departments. I mentioned Law Library. We also help out budget. We help out county manager's office. We help out HR. And we offer fire district. And we have a total of 11 departments that we're supporting to help those small departments that are needing assistance with financial services or human capital type of work. When I say human capital, I'm saying like timekeeping type activities or personnel processing type of records for their departments. Additionally, we operate the countywide call center functions, as well as Archives and Record Management Warehouse, which was a transfer from the former Records and Tax Administration Department. Risk management. They're responsible for employees and citizen safety across all the county owned and leased facilities. Risk management mitigates risk and liability to the organization by thoroughly reviewing all vendor contracts, ensure that proper levels of insurance are held, and that we have the appropriate language in all our vendor contracts. Risk management protects drivers' training to staff that drive county vehicles, as well as work on all liability, auto, and work comp claims. Purchasing is responsible for assisting departments with procuring commodities and services under the guidelines of the county purchasing policies and procedures. And last, accounting and financial reporting is responsible for maintaining the county's financial records. All financial transactions from the flow from the county's general ledger, and it's the responsibility of the accountants to review, record, and report the financial health of the county in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles. The accounting division is responsible also for the annual financial statement and the single audit for federal grant funds. The accounting division also administers the county's post-issuance compliance debt program. We think we're pretty good, and we can show it. Government Finance Officers Association Budget Office talked about on the budget side. We receive excellence on the financial reporting side. As you can see, we haven't received the fiscal 2020 financial report achievement, but we have for the 19, which is 33 years in a row. We also have received achievement and excellence in procurement, which yesterday we were just notified that we wanted again for this year in 21, which would be our 14th year. Last year, we received an award from the National Association of Government Defined Contribution Administrators on our leadership, which we received our leadership award on how we use our technology and social media to help with our employees in their defined contribution plans that we offer. And lastly, professional certifications is something that is very important to us. We promote staff development and actually have performance measures for staff certifications. Our goal is at least 22% of our staff has certifications, and we're at 28%. Some folks, like in our purchasing division, actually have more than one certification. But we have certifications in public management, procurement, purchasing card, payroll, benefits, and government finance. So what are we doing today? Well, you might have heard of a thing called COVID. Last year, financial management was tasked with managing the federal coronavirus relief fund. And I would say we were stretched to meet all the county department needs as well as those community partners. We have a few dollars left for 21 that is targeted for public health services such as testing and vaccinations, as well as public health personnel costs. We recently received the local fiscal recovery funds that we managed over the next 4 years through 2024. And we are gathering information and waiting for the final rule to be issued from the U.S. Treasury. We are excited to begin having discussions with the Board of County Commissioners tomorrow regarding the county's purchasing policy and procedures. It's been over 17 years since the last review and revision of these policies, and we look forward to implementing new changes that lead to effective procurement practices. And lastly, the pandemic forced a lot of people to work from home, and for us, it was very successful. Some staff from the various divisions have been working a hybrid schedule since May, and we would like to continue to explore and provide this option in the future. So the next 10 years. The success of our department and those that we serve is dependent on our people. So it's important that we as management always have a succession plan. Finance management will focus on developing and investing in our people. And we believe this type of culture leads to engaged employees and employment stability. We have a lot of long-term employees, and our department's length of service working at the county is over 10 years. We look to leverage technology by moving from an on-prem Oracle system to our Oracle cloud-based applications. We will continue to evaluate and offer services to departments that seek our assistance for shared services. We will evaluate and propose revised grants management practices, procedures, and oversight. And we will evaluate and look for efficiencies of the county's current billing and accounts receivable operations. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to share the information about our department. And Becky and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Questions for Brent or Becky? Mayor.
to what portion or what specific departments, elected bodies, governing bodies do you not provide shared services now?
So it'd be easier to list who I provide services for. So Board of County Commissioners in the County Manager's Office, District Courts, District Court Administration, Planning, Airport, Human Resources, Budget. Where am I at? Like the DA's office and sheriff, there was a large operations. They have their own fiscal managers, administrative managers. And so they will be standalones that we will work with individually, but we don't provide them any services.
Thank you.
Any question? Oh, Karen Brownlee.
Well, that might be a loaded question. So we allow departments actually they work with us. I would say our purchasing administrators act as liaisons to work with our departments to purchase items. So, when our purchasing administrators are more focused on the large ticket items. So they're going to be working with our departments to do more RFPs and working those through the purchasing process and going to the board than working small dollar items. When I say small dollars, things that are under $10,000, the departments are doing that on their own and we let it flow through. We on our side are just monitoring and reviewing what's being purchased to make sure that maybe there's something that we should possibly have a term of supply contract set up, or something that, or if we do have a term of supply contract and they're buying from somewhere else, we probably should be looking at why they're doing that.
So I understand that you do cover some employee benefits. Is that correct? I mean, you manage them apparently.
We manage all the employee benefits.
So your HR division does not take on that function. Do I understand that correctly?
That is correct. So finance has had the benefits responsibility since 2002. Before that, HR had it for about 10 or 12 years. And before that, it was in finance and the county clerk's office. So it kind of goes in a rotation. In this case, we find that how we're set up is that payroll and benefits works very closely together. And so having been in the same department is very beneficial. But we also support Johnson County Parks and Rec in regards to like their payables operations, their payroll and benefits operations. So having everything in one shop helps with providing guidance and running all the different payrolls that we do. Because someone brought a question about election payroll. We have election payroll runs through our office. We've worked with the various commissioners over the years where we have interfaces that feed from the election office, and we have a separate election payroll system to run their payroll whenever they want to. So they don't have to wait every 2 weeks. If they want to run it every week, we had it set to run every week to pay the poll workers, because that was a way to also incentivize some folks to come and work the polls, because they didn't want to wait 3 weeks or whatever system we had. Is like, as soon as you can give me the file, I will pay those people as fast as you want. And we have multiple payrolls who will act as service bureaus for like I said, for the fire district number 2 and a few other agencies.
So what services do you provide for the library system?
Okay. So the library seeked our services for the human capital side of things. So we help them with all their personnel processing and all of their timekeeping and payroll type activities. And so they actually pay our department. We have our MOU is that they actually fund the position that that assists with them on that. They found that they had one person in the library that was doing it. That person left. They didn't really have backup, and even when they did have a person there, they're gone or sick. They have nobody else. In my office, while I have a dedicated person for the library, I have a group of people that can help them, and so they always can get an answer. We can always help them because everyone has responsibilities to help them. And that's no different than any other department. We've had different departments over the years where they lose a key staff member, and it takes a few months to hire somebody. They will call us and say, "Can you help us?" Yes, we can. We have it because we control all the responsibilities. We control the internal controls, so we can help them in a way to keep them going until they can get staff hired, and then actually train those people on our processes and then roll them off.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brent, is it accurate that you report to the county manager as the director of the department?
I report to assistant county manager.
Okay. And
Mr.
are there any items in the county charter that you've identified that would, if changed, help your organization fulfill its mission?
No, not really, unless you give me more people and more technology. Okay. But no.
Brenda?
Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned internal controls and preparation of audited financial statements. Can you share with us how you work with the county auditor as well, and what the interface is between those two offices?
We don't play together.
Yes.
So really, and you jump in if you want. I mean, when audits another department, a lot of times we're brought in because they're going to ask us questions. How are they supposed to do business? How is that department supposed to do business? Because for us, being a decentralized organization, is that we provide the overarching guidelines of how to do business. Then it's up to departments to put it in the way that they want to do business. One example was one time a department was complaining to me. A department head was complaining to me about how many approvals need to get something passed through. And I was like, "Can you give me an example?" And they did. And it's like, that wasn't us. That was your own people telling you that you have to approve it 3 times. We only need it 1 time. You just have to have the right approval authority for whatever you want to workflow through. But it was your own people that thought that they had to be approved 3 different times. But to get to your question on internal audit, is that they usually will ask us questions. Maybe we'll point to different policies, procedures that we have, and maybe answer some of their questions, or they might ask for our advice, and we will share that. Becky, you want anything else you want to add to that?
Becky Jones, Financial Management and Administration. I would just add that the internal auditors and the external auditors are looking at 2 different things. The external auditors are looking for accurate and timely financial transactions in our financial reports, as well as the internal controls, like Brent mentioned, around all of the transaction processing. They're looking to make sure that our financial statements are, that there's no material misstatements and that they're presented accurately and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Internal audit focuses more on department efficiencies and how they do the day-to-day processing within their different departments. And so it's a different mindset, and there's different rules and items that they're looking for.
And my understanding is our external auditor is BKD, and that is
no, our external auditors are Reuben Brown.
Reuben Brown.
Yes.
And is that the entire commission votes on that engagement and that?
That's correct. We go out for RFP every 5 years, which is a request for proposal. We go out for RFP every 5 years. We were with Allen Gibson Hulick for approximately 20 years. The last RFP that we did was in 2018. And we did switch to Reuben Brown. It wasn't because Alan Gibbs, you know, was doing anything wrong. It's just they actually came in at a lower cost and therefore had a higher RFP score. Reuben Brown's been great to work with. You know, it was quite the transition that it happened right when COVID hit. And so everybody was working remotely. And so to have brand new auditors and do an audit completely remote is a real testament to the accounting staff. They did a fabulous job, and so did Reuben Brown, and we were successful.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring up the question now that I told Scott I might bring up. To an outsider and ignorant me, it looks like there's duplication of effort between the budget office, the financial management office, and maybe the internal auditor. Can you help shed light on why those are three separate functions if one of our goals is to help through the charter process, help the government structure be more efficient? I know we're not to micromanage it, but
That's fine. Well, I look at it personally, you can decide, but from a budget perspective, they're kind of like Scott talked about, is that they're working with the departments and county management and the commission on what they're what their goals are, and saying more or less what we're going to fund and how much you're going to be allowed to spend each year. In finance, we track what you spent. So we more or less tell the story of how you spent what you were authorized to spend for each year, for each project. Does that help?
I think so, but I heard efforts at innovation and efficiency in both, and maybe that's good that everybody's looking for that. But would that be true that both areas are looking for how you can innovate, be more efficient, bring more services for lower cost, that type of thing?
Yeah, and budget side on their innovation, sometimes their innovation is more about the programs and the departments. On finance side, we're looking for efficiency that's more business operations driven.
Thank you. Other questions? No.
If you don't mind, Chairman, so
not at all.
One of the things I would say, hopefully that won't offend Brent, but they're more operational and transactional. We on the budget side are more on the management side. We are doing numbers. We're responsible for the budget side of what's in the financial system. We're helping departments out when they get in trouble, with expenditures and whatnot. But we do a lot of projects right now. My analyst for the airport and myself are working with Aeronauto and with Van Trust on the master development plan for the airport. Been in a number of meetings working on presentations to the board. We just met with the board last week. We've got another session coming up in September where we're trying to finalize the master development plan and get the board to sign off. There's some funding pieces to it. So we are constantly working on projects and initiatives within the budget office, not just on the innovation side, but on the budget office. So we get involved with lots of initiatives that are countywide. We had an analyst, we have an LIA program, which is a leadership in action program. It's just recognizing Supreme but beyond. We had an analyst win that a couple of years ago because she helped bring along two countywide projects that were struggling over the end. So my folks go in, or Robert and I go in, and we help departments get from A to B with the board or with an initiative or a project. Some of these are we centralized IT purchasing, which involved departments giving up control and centralized budgeting. And there's a lot of tough conversations that happen, a lot of negotiations. We hired some folks in DTI, but they didn't have experience in the county. And so one of my analysts spearheaded that and jumped in and helped negotiate those deals. We did the same thing with fleet management where we centralized that. And my folks, we had the same analyst went in and helped have those tough conversations, give people giving up a little control, trusting that Fleet would do a good job, but also, giving up budget dollars. So we get involved in a lot of projects on the management side and initiatives. And so it's actually very different. Now, that doesn't mean we don't work closely with Brent's staff. Robert and I attend the Healthcare Fund committee meetings. I'm a voting member there. We work closely with Becky's accounting staff to reconcile the difference between budgetary basis, which is based on Kansas cash basis. So there's just an awful lot of things we do. We are dealing with numbers, we are dealing with dollars, but it's a very different approach. And most organizations of any size and complexity have a budget function that is separate from the accounting or the financial function. It is not always a department. There's nuanced reasons for us to be a department. And I will hopefully rely on Commissioner Peterson's memory of some of the leadership we provided during his time. He was with us for a long time, and he was with us during the Great Recession. And to show the kind of leadership that comes out of my office on the strategic side, where Brent's most focused on keeping the wheels turning operationally. So
I knew you'd get into this somehow.
Mr.
That's
Chairman.
helpful to me. Thank you.
Chairman, can I add one thing? You asked about the internal audit. And so until 1996, we didn't have an internal auditor. And now we have a staff of internal auditors. And I can tease and say, sometimes they cringe when they call, but it's for the best for the organization, because they're really checking on us and really checking on the organization, that we're following what we said we're doing, what the board approved, and as well as pushing us on how we do business and how we could do it better. So that's the difference, is that you need some separation. You wouldn't want it in the same department, because you need to have an outside party to really be that person to say, is this the best way you can do it? Or we might disagree with how you're going about it. And is there a better way? This is what we're thinking. And then you talk through it.
The only
Mayor
thing
Boehm,
the only thing else I would add is our internal audit department doesn't report to the county manager. They actually report directly to the board. So they are carved out differently and have a different reporting structure than all the rest of the departments. And that does add an arm's length transaction for that department.
Mayor Boehm.
Thank you. I believe it's all good information to know. I'm going to call the relevance question, though.
Yeah.
Your departments are not set up based on charter planks. They're set up based on the county manager's direction, correct?
Yes.
So really, this isn't within our purview unless we want to take over department structure in a charter ordinance, and I don't think we do.
This on, there we go. The only clarification I would make to that is a reminder that the charter does require the county manager to bring any departmental reorganization efforts before the board for approval. Brent just referenced financial management and administration, his department. You're going to hear from Tom Franzen with Treasury, Taxation, and Vehicles. That was a recent reorganization that required to go before the Board of County Commissioners for their approval. So there is some relevance to structure to the charter.
Brenda, then we'll move on.
May I just go back to this internal auditor position? Is that a process auditor or a financial auditor? Can you explain a little bit more about the background or credentials or the necessary skill set to be an internal auditor for the county?
I believe that they're supposed to have an internal audit certification. It is more of a process rather than transaction type of audit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chairman Musil, this is Joy. Can I ask one other quick question? I'm still having a hard time understanding which organizations, which agencies within the county governance are offered assistance through the budget and financial planning arm of county governance versus those who the financial management and administration also reach out to help them with internal or external audits. Is it possible that we could get a list of those agencies that both of these arms of county government work with? I'm
I
just
bet
a
we
little
could.
confused.
Why don't, I will work with Linda and Maury to have them report that back to the board in writing.
Thank you.
Did you understand the request completely, Chairman?
Well, you could ask me that about anything.
Sorry to put you on the
You know-
spot there.
You know the answer.
I want
to
to
that. I
make
think
sure I
what-
understand
I
what,
think what Joy is looking for is I think what we want from each organization is who they serve directly and who they maybe serve through an MOU or a support service. And if we had those from each department, then we could tell which ones overlap. Is that fair, Joy?
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to understand where accountability lies within different agencies and agency heads, and who's taking advantage of budgeting and financial planning, because it seemed like there was some that's not really dictated by anything. It's just if they want help, they get help. So I guess I'm just, it seems a little ambiguous to me in some areas. So just, they could just outline, these are the agencies that we work with on both sides. I don't know. Does that make sense?
yeah, I think that's something we can work on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, I'd like to add to Joy's comment, this is Don Roberts, in the fact that I'd also like to know who they do not help. So I've heard Fire District 2, but there's Fire District 1 and 3 that I didn't hear mentioned tonight, and I'd like to know if they also receive assistance.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Don.
Okay, I think they got that. Thanks, Don, Mayor. We're 5:37. Tom? It's 23 minutes. Don't get us too excited though on Treasury, taxation, and vehicles.
That's not going to be hard to do. Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Tom Franzen, and I am the Director of the Department of Treasury, Taxation, and Vehicles, and I'm also your County Treasurer. First, let me start by thanking you for the important work that you're doing. As you know, the work that you're doing can be very impactful as you look to find ways to make county government better. I'm going to reference later on in my presentation how impactful a Charter Commission's work from 20 years ago has been. And also, I'd like to reference a comment made a couple of weeks ago. Chairman Musil, you introduced Bo Bovair, our county appraiser, as the most popular man in the county, if you recall that. I would offer that I might be a close second to that as county treasurer. I've got a few people that are always interested in wanting to have a conversation about county government when they get their tax bills. Okay, so real quick, the agenda slide here just shows what I'm going to talk about. We're going to briefly run through the roles, the authority, the budget, and the financial scope for the Department of Treasury, Taxation, and Vehicles. We'll briefly touch base on the structure. We will talk a little bit in depth about the evolution of the department and how we've gotten to this point. You've heard a little bit about that today already from some of the merger conversations. And then we'll talk a little bit about the efficiencies that we've seen from the office over those 20 years. And then I'm going to go ahead and wrap up with some of the challenges and some of the both current and future challenges. But before I go on to the next slide, I just want to take a moment and reflect on the impact of the charter changes from 20 years ago. I would offer that no department has been more greatly impacted than the department I am describing to you now. The Treasury, Taxation, and Vehicles Department is a direct outcome of the changes proposed and made 20 years ago by that charter commission to change the county clerk, the county treasurer, and the register of deeds from elected officials to appointed officials in Johnson County. Having said that, the basic authority and responsibilities of the Treasury, Taxation, and Vehicles Department are derived from Kansas statute. The county clerk responsibilities are varied, but as you'll see from this slide, there are three core responsibilities. First is calculating mill levies for the taxing entities in our community. Second is creating and maintaining the property tax roll. And third is certifying tax unit boundaries. Next, county treasurer responsibilities are varied as well, but there are a few primary functions that the county treasurer is responsible for. First, it's to bill, collect, and distribute the tax roll. Second is to administer the motor vehicle functions for the state of Kansas as an agent for the Department of Revenue. And third is to provide banking and investment services for the county. I will note with respect to the motor vehicle services that we offer in Johnson County, we only offer title and registration services. We do not offer driver's license services. That's a common misconception. A lot of times people come in from outside of our community, and many counties across the state of Kansas that function, both of those functions are handled by the county treasurer. In the larger counties, that's not the case. We just handle the title and registration component of vehicles. And last but not least, when I talk about the Register of Deeds and the responsibilities in that area for the county. Primarily, the Register of Deeds function is to act as a custodian of all land record documents and recording all documents, all types of documents, but primarily deeds, mortgages, and maps. From this next slide, you can see there's 3 years worth of budget information here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. But the reality of it is the department combined has an expense budget of roughly $9.5 million. You'll note there that the blue is the maximum expenditure budget. The red is the local tax supported expenditure amount. The difference there is going to be the revenue that we actually bring in. And primarily in this department, the revenue difference is going to be attributed to the fees associated with motor vehicle, which are roughly about $5 million. This next slide I wanted to put in front of you is to really give you an idea for the scope or the magnitude of some of the services that we offer. First, we bill and collect over $1.4 billion for our community annually. We distribute approximately 80% of those dollars that we collect, with the remaining 20% being retained at the county level, which reflects the county, the library, and the park and rec levy tax amounts. Last year, the cash management and investing responsibilities included managing an average daily balance of $992 million. Given the size and scope of the dollars, we have dedicated staff, as you might expect, that are professionally credentialed, who manage the daily cash and the investment portfolio. Last year, our cash manager earned over $7 million of interest income, with the portfolio earning 75 basis points. And I will tell you, historically, over the last 20 years, that is low. We've had years we've exceeded, we've done more than double that in interest income. It's obviously a function of the interest rate environment we're living in. And another element of that is the restrictions that we have to follow that are statutory in nature when we invest public monies. I will note that the county is one of 9 entities in the state of Kansas that has received and maintains expanded powers investment authority that is granted by the Pool Money Investment Board in Topeka. Under the motor vehicle area, the operation collects over $103 million in property tax, and interestingly enough, only retains 15% of all the fees collected associated with administering those services, or about $5 million. And finally, through our Register of Deeds services that we offer, we collect over $10 million annually to fund county services. I wanted to provide the data on this next slide to give you an understanding of the tax roll in Johnson County. This pie chart on the left graphically depicts how the annual tax abstract breaks down. And as you can see, tax policy has evolved over the years to where real property tax is the driver for ad valorem tax collections in our community. That didn't used to be that way. And if you look at the pie chart on the right, the real property tax is roughly a 60-40 split, with 60% being residential and 40%, almost 40% being commercial. I get questions a lot around, what does that tax look like? What is our tax base? And when I explain that to them, a lot of people start to understand where we are getting tax dollars to go ahead and fund county government. This next slide shows a high-level organizational chart for the department and how it's aligned. The Land Records Division on the left reflects the former Records and Tax Administration Department that you've heard talked about here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about, which was comprised of the former county clerk and Register of Deeds functions. The other two divisions, Treasury and Taxation and Motor Vehicle, reflect the former Treasurer's Office functions. You'll see FTE counts, revenues, and expenses associated with each division are listed on the top there. I will tell you the combined total FTE for the department is 108.75 FTE. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this slide because I think it tells a great story for county government and for what I would presume the Charter Commission in the year 2000 was either intending or hoping for, which was an evolution of county government to get better. The land records, excuse me. In 2000, the Charter Commission recommended and the voters supported a number of initiatives, one of which was to change the county clerk, the treasurer, and register of deeds from elected official to appointed official, as I previously mentioned. The first impact, though, was felt in 2005 with the expiration of the last term of the county clerk and the register of deeds. These two offices were combined under one appointed official at that time in a newly formed department called Records and Tax Administration. Later that year in 2005, the treasurer's term expired. At that same time, we appointed a treasurer at that time, and at the same time, we chose to go ahead and have the motor vehicle function that was formerly part of the treasurer's office split out separately, and we appointed a director of motor vehicles and had that individual report directly to the county manager's office. In 2007, we chose to go ahead and realign the motor vehicle operation solely under the county treasurer. And then as we move into 2010, you heard a little bit of conversation from Mr. Christensen about the evolution of the finance office. The county was continuing to seek operational efficiencies, and we combined the treasurer's office and the finance office in 2010 into a new department known as Treasury and Financial Management. At that point, I became the appointed treasurer. And most recently, as you also heard at the beginning of this year, the county has further chosen to seek efficiencies and effectiveness by realigning the land records function of the Records and Tax Administration Department and the Treasury component of Treasury and Financial Management into a new department called Treasury, Taxation, and Vehicles. So you may be asking yourself, why would the county make these changes over the years? And the answer is quite simple. We're always looking for ways to provide better service to our customers at a lower cost. This next slide highlights some of those efficiencies and innovations that occurred throughout these efforts over the years. First, the Records and Tax Administration Department reduced the headcount by 15 FTE over its 15-year existence. I have a slide coming up to depict this. Next, since we combined the treasurer and motor vehicle operations, we have improved payment collections through automated, more efficient processes such as bank lockboxes, credit cards, and kiosk channels that increase from roughly 60% to over 90% of the payments we handle in a more efficient manner. The next bullet talks about reducing headcount in the taxation division by 3 over the last 20 years. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, there aren't a lot of employees that are in that taxation division. Juxtaposed on a slide coming up, you'll see the growth in parcel count over that time, and you'll start to see where the efficiencies really are displayed. The motor vehicle operation has implemented a number of technology solutions that have made the operation more efficient over the years, namely the use of a queueless line management system in 2009 that I would presume many in this room have used. It is a great tool that allows us to better manage the customer flow, but more importantly, it gives the customer the ability to manage themselves. They don't have to reside in an office waiting for their number to be called. Another technology innovation we provided was self-service in-office kiosks for registration renewals, and that was implemented in 2017. The last bullet lists a number of awards we've received over the years for implementation of efficient and innovative programs. For the sake of time, Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to go on. This slide here is the parcel growth I just mentioned, juxtaposed against the FTE reduction in the taxation division. You'll see that the headcount reduced by 27%, but with the parcel growth over the years, that's a 26% growth. So obviously something we can be proud of to show that we've been doing more with less over the years. This next slide shows the reduction in headcount in the Records and Tax Administration Office, which is roughly 29% over those years, juxtaposed against the number of transactions we've handled. The transactions really haven't changed dramatically. They've kind of fluctuated, but this slide shows that we continue to do more with less in that area also. This next slide is a little subjective, but I wanted to make sure we got it out there because the motor vehicle operation is really important to us. And it's one of the questions or set of questions we put on our community survey. This slide depicts the overall satisfaction for the motor vehicle services for the last 5 years. I would like to point out why I believe the blue bar, which indicates the number of positive responses we've received, continues to be high. In 2019, we noticed there was a bit of a bump up in some of the negative responses. And as we started to dig into that, we believe that really wasn't an indication or reflection of the registration services that we provide. There was some disruption at the state level for driver's license, if you recall back in 2018, where they were going through some challenges with their technology from a line management system. They were also having some staffing related issues, and that was all coupled with the fact that they were in the process of implementing the Real ID process. And when you think about that, there was a fair amount of disruption in that world, and that became a media story. And I believe a lot of our customers were just thinking that might be a county function, so we got some feedback on the survey. I believe that was a holdover in the 2020 survey as well. I'm looking forward to the next survey to see if that bears out. Okay, so this next slide talks about consolidation drivers. And I want to take a minute to talk about kind of our thought around when we put this department together recently, what we were thinking and what we're expecting to achieve. First, we're going to be leveraging the 3 land records areas into one potential system. We currently have the county clerk functions and the treasurer functions are hosted on our newer land record system, Orion. We're going to be looking to see if we can migrate some of the register of deeds functions that are part of land records into the system as well, thereby reducing data management issues, creating more efficiencies, reducing costs, and hopefully delivering better customer service. I'll also note all responsibilities are now externally facing for this department. Previously, as you heard, Treasury and Financial Management kind of had 2 customer groups, both internal as well as external. Part of our thought process as we went through the realignment here was, let's make a department that really is all externally focused. And another bullet here is really focused on improving accuracy and efficiency within the annual tax roll process. And more importantly, just a focused accountability on property taxation. If there's a problem with taxation, you can go to one department to get your answer. So slide 16 lays out a few of the challenges that the department currently faces. First, you heard a little bit of conversation earlier today about Senate Bill 13 and its companion bill, House Bill 2104, which is known as the Truth in Taxation legislation that was recently passed last session. This legislation has, just to put it bluntly, it's created significant disruption for county clerks across the state of Kansas. We're working through the process currently, and we're confident we'll be able to go ahead and meet the law and get it taken care of. But there's a whole lot of change going on under the hood for local governments when it comes to the budgeting process and how we turn that into tax levies. The next bullet is an ongoing challenge, and one I truly appreciate having, actually. We are blessed to be in one of the few growing counties in the state. With that growth comes increased demand for services and expectations. Continuing to keep customer satisfaction high will continue to be a challenge, and it's a challenge that my staff and I welcome. The next bullet on motor vehicle as a challenge actually could have been a couple of slides, but I didn't want to draw you through all that. So I boiled it down into the essence of really what the issue is. As an agent of the state, we have limited authority. We do the lion's share of the work, and the majority of the fees go to state agencies. We are limited from a revenue generation standpoint. The fees are hard-coded in statute and do not allow for increasing costs of the operation, which means local general fund tax support has to go over to the motor vehicle operation to provide the level of service we do. And I'll be very honest with you, that level of service is good. It's not what I would like it to be, but we make use of the resources we have. And I'm thankful for the Board of County Commissioners for the support they provide every year in funding from general fund support. The next bullet is a fairly recent challenge that has been developing, and we're noticing a changing perception of how core government functions are perceived. I'm seeing indications where some customers view our frontline staff as just clerks doing data entry. It's not a good job. They're not looking at them as people in the community that there are resources for. And this is challenging because these jobs are important. They become more complex over time. They're very challenging jobs and they require thought work. They're just not data entry. So I'm hoping this is maybe transitory and not a trend, but I have noticed that recently and it does give me some cause for concern. The last challenge noted is one you've heard from a few departments. Labor markets are tough for us right now. Attracting and retaining quality employees is challenging in this market. We have limited tools in our tool belt to address current market conditions. Turnover is up in the motor vehicle operation. Normally, we have been averaging anywhere from 15 to 20% a year in turnover. That itself is a challenge. Year to date 2021, we have over 40% currently in turnover in the motor vehicle operation. This disruption leads to limited service capacity and also leads to longer wait times for our customers. It creates challenges, but we'll deal with the challenges. We'll do our best to hire, we'll do our best to retain, but I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that's a concern for me, especially in this environment. I don't have a good feel for the labor markets and how we're going to be able to handle in the short term. With that, Mr. Chairman, those are all my prepared remarks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
I think this is another helpful presentation, although I think Mayor Boehm hit it on the head. Other than a department reorganization that would go to the Board of County Commissioners, there's not anything specific that you have, as I understand it, that from the Homeworld Charter that you can either affect or that we could change. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. Questions? Any questions from our Zoom participants? Randy?
This is Randy Hutchins. Can you help me understand that last statement, the Homeroom Charter? I'm having a hard time understanding what is it that we cannot change?
Well, my understanding is that what the charter addresses is that if there is a reorganization of departments recommended by the county manager, it must be presented to and approved by the Board of County Commissioners. So I guess to that extent, if Tom had a recommendation of something like that, he could present it. But right now, the charter doesn't address that we can specify how departments are organized. That's a county manager recommendation with a Board of County Commissioner decision. Is that right, Maury? That's what I was getting at, Randy.
Okay. So bottom line is the commission here obviously could change the way it functions, just as they did, 20 years ago when they went from an elected position to an appointed position, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Chairman Musil.
Yes, Joy, go ahead.
It's Joy again. Tom said something early on in his presentation that speaks to what Randy just brought up. He said something about the charter changing these positions from elected to appointed made a world of difference. And I'm just curious what he meant by that and how was it a positive change?
So thank you for the question, Ms. Costin. The reflection I have over 20 years of seeing how the departments have functioned under appointed leadership. I've noticed reduction in headcount. I've noticed cost savings. I've noticed efficiencies, both in process and in technology. And not that those wouldn't have happened, but if those were three still elected official offices, I would probably say that maybe there wouldn't be as much collaboration. And I use the perspective I have as county treasurer, where I interact with county treasurers across the state, and I see the challenges that come from elected officials maybe not working together in the best interest of their customers. They are maybe more focused on their own budgets and whatever problems are in front of them, and not about what problems are in front of all of the elected officials in their community. And so with that, that's my perspective.
Thank you for that. And tell me a little bit more about what you think the changing perceptions of core government functions. What do you think is driving that change in perception?
And again, thank you for the question. That's a great question. My staff and I were talking about that because when we first listed out what we thought the challenges were, this one at first wasn't one that I really thought about including, but then again, I didn't want to miss the opportunity because I will tell you over the years, the interaction with Johnson County citizens, our customers, has been overwhelmingly positive, overwhelmingly. Even in the tough years, overwhelmingly positive. I will say, though, we have noticed recently, and I don't know if this is a reflection of the political climate, of social media, of maybe people just having bad days, but treating staff differently, maybe with not the respect they used to treat them. And really judgmental to the extent that some of them are looking at and saying, well, you're just a clerk, type my information and don't ask any questions. That's not normal in our community. So again, as I mentioned, I hope this is not a trend, but it's just an observation right now. And again, I don't have an answer, but it is something I felt needed to be brought up as far as the challenges.
Thank you. I really appreciate your perspective. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
We are at 6 o'clock. Are there other questions? Oh, Dawn? Oh, can you use the mic? I'm sorry.
Mr. Sherman talked about how difficult it was to find someone to be the election commissioner. It seemed to imply that. So is there a succession planning going on to ensure that we can find commissioners for the future? Not that you're leaving anytime soon.
So is there a specific plan in place? I can't say that there is. Basically the position is at the appointment of the Secretary of State. It's a 4-year term. I'm inheriting a partial term that will come due for reappointment in mid-year 2022. So again, this serves at the direction of the Secretary of State's office. Probably the challenge is that the election administrative profession is a very kind of specific niche thing, just like being a county appraiser or county engineer, those kind of things. And when the labor pool comes up in terms of trying to find a person that has only a 2-year residency requirement, that becomes the challenges. Johnson County is a little unique in that we don't have really a peer entity in Kansas. We're rather large. Even the election we're conducting now is larger than virtually any of the other county elections right now. So that's the challenges at the scale and the magnitude of the kind of almost the urban environment we're doing it in. So the succession planning from the leadership standpoint has been a challenge. And even at the staff level, we had the county election office was very beneficial. Debbie Terrell was there for 25 plus years and was really the bedrock and cornerstone of leading the election office through many commissioners and trying to get through a number of issues. She retired here at the end of 2020, and I've got a good staff, but it is new to Johnson County as well.
Fred, on that tone, I assume that it wouldn't be that beneficial to say somebody's a resident of Kansas for 2 years because the specialization, especially with the complexity of Johnson County, would require somebody probably in a national search. Is that?
I think there would be some benefit. I mean, you're kind of, again, from a policy perspective, wanting familiarity with the community versus understanding the nuances of election administration. And they are going to be very state specific. They can take probably a well-crafted election administrator from one state to another state and understand the big parameters, but there are going to be very specific state nuances that any new election administrator that's not familiar with the Kansas system is going to have a little bit of a learning curve, much like Chief Legal Counsel is experiencing right now at the county level, has done a wider range of legal services, but understanding the nuances of the Kansas system in particular is a good challenge sometimes.
Thank you. There are no other questions. Remind everybody, August 9th is our next meeting. We'll be with the 7 sitting county commissioners. Please get questions in advance if you want them to address them more specifically. I'm sure we'll hear some varied perspectives. We have completed essentially County Government 101. Although we are scheduled to hear from Penny Post Oak Ferguson in our last meeting in August, and also from former county chair Annabeth Serbaugh, who served as the first countywide chair. But beyond that, we're ready to move into the substance of this commission, which is to decide what proposals might be presented to, that we want to present to voters, or that we want to recommend generally otherwise. So everybody's thinking hat is already on, I'm sure. The sooner we can start getting focused on what those proposals might be, the quicker we can get to them and complete our job. We've been going now for 5 months, almost every 2 weeks. So I just urge everybody to think about those, and if you have proposals, get those to Linda, and we'll circulate those when we have a group of them as we get closer to September 22nd. Anything else for the good of the cause? Linda?
Chairman, I'd like to announce, make sure everyone is aware that our next meeting on August 9th will be held in person at the Administration Building, Johnson County Administration Building, 111 South Cherry in Olathe. It will also, for the members, be through Zoom, and then it will still be broadcast live to the public.
Thank you. I know we'll lose somebody between switching all the meetings, but bear with us. I would accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Jimmy Guyanu moves and Don
Second.
Rattan seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries surprisingly unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes.
A little closer.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. That's probably a good idea. Get Edward over here.